So at the end of 2023, a new Instagram account was launched called Harman Photo. Well, the branding and graphics showed that this was indeed something related to Harman Technologies, the company we all know and love as the parent firm behind Ilford Photo. Harman Photo began to tease something was due to be released in December of that year, and we were treated to Harman Phoenix 200, a color negative film with a color palette that looked unique and unlike any others that I have seen in the past. While I am primarily a black and white shooter, I was excited for a new color film in today's market. I got my hands on some rolls and then they sat while I waited for the weather to get better, as we were treated to a very dull gray with no snow winter here in southern Ontario. But we finally got some lovely weather in March, and I took advantage of that and shot my 3 rolls, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So why is this important? Why is a brand new color film still meaningful in today's digital world? Well, the simple fact is that making film is hard, and making color film is even harder. There are only a handful of filmmakers in the world that can produce film at scale, and of those, there are even less that can produce color film at scale. In North America, we have Eastman Kodak. In Japan, there's Fujifilm. In Germany, there's Innoviscope. And there's a 4th one, Lucky, in Shanghai, which I believe can produce color film, but I'm not sure if they just contract that out to Innoviscope in Germany. So adding a new color film manufacturer that can produce at scale in the UK is good for the film photography ecosystem. But the sad part about all of this is the lukewarm reception that at best has been given for Harman Phoenix. And I'll admit, even I was unsure about trying the rolls out after seeing the initial results coming out of the film photography community. Things looked gritty, they looked grainy, and often terrible. But you had usable, workable images coming out of the film. And that got me thinking back to 2008 about the last time someone brought a new color film and new black and white film seemingly out of nowhere. An impossible project, one might say. And that was the group of scientists, inventors, and enthusiasts who bought the last Polaroid factory in Enschede in the Netherlands and reinvented instant integral film for SX70 and Type 600 Polaroid instant cameras. And if you remember that, those initial runs were terrible. The film was highly sensitive to light right out of the camera, and I'm sure some of you still have those frog tongues attached to your old Polaroid cameras. The black and whites weren't truly black and whites, they were sort of a muddy brown faded sepia color, and the color film was even barely color. But they had a viable product, and they took the money that people gave them for buying these early versions of the film, turned it around and put it right into researching, developing, and creating improved versions. And today, back under the proper name of Polaroid, they have good products that are usable and are still used by instant film photographers today. And I think we need to give Harman that same leeway and that same support as a community. So what is Phoenix 200? Well, in industry parlance, it's a minimum viable product. It is a color film that produces workable images. Is it Phoenix's final form? I sure hope not. And that's where community buy-in is 100% necessary, because in our buying of the product and posting about it, that sends the money back into Harman, which shows them that, yeah, there is a demand for a new color negative film and something different from what we have gotten from Innoviscope, Eastman Kodak, and Fujifilm. And it allows them to better produce a new version of this. So I certainly hope that Phoenix 200 is not the final form of this product, and that Harman takes the same route as the Impossible project did and continues to innovate. So what exactly is Phoenix 200? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is a color negative film stock that is rated at ASA 200, and it's processed using the standard C41. You can either do this at home or in a lab setting. What I found really interesting is that the film base is actually yellow, something I've only seen on one other film, a super slow motion picture film from Eastman Kodak. Well, not as yellow as that film. It does look different from your average color negative. And as it turns out, Phoenix 200 started off its life as a chromogenic black and white film, Ilford Super XP2. And it is a black and white film that can be either developed in traditional black and white chemistry or in C41 chemistry at home or in the lab settings. And this fact is further reinforced when you looked at the processed negatives. Most color negatives have an orange base to them. Even NC500 from Orwo and Innovus Coat has more of a greenish cast to their color base. But Phoenix 200 is purple and gray, very similar to what I've seen with black and white films, especially chromogenic black and white films. Now, also at this point, you're probably wondering why Harman Technologies just didn't release their new films under their existing Ilford brand. If you're a film nerd and a history nerd and you know that Ilford did in fact produce color films in the past under the Ilfa color branding, the shortest answer is it's complicated. The shorter answer is that it has to do with history. Harman Technology, Ilford Photo are not the same company as it was when it was originally founded as the Britannia Works, the original name for Ilford Photo. Like any company through the years, it has changed hands, it has split, merged, and split again. And either way, under the current ownership, Ilford Photo is not allowed to produce or sell color films, as a second Ilford owns those rights, and under the current agreement, Ilford is only allowed to produce black and white films, which is where Harman Photo comes into play, because it's a different brand. Might have the same parent company, but if you look at the fine print, nothing's stopping Harman Photo from producing a color film. So, what are my thoughts on the results I got with Phoenix 200? Well, for the review, I used my Canon EOS Elan 7. I shot 2 of the rolls at ASA 200 and 1 of the rolls at ASA 160. I used my 3 favorite prime lenses, the 50mm, the 40mm, and the 28mm. And for ease of use and my own sanity, I decided to shoot the camera in program mode, or full AE. I got my film developed at Burlington Camera, and all 3 rolls were developed normally. Now, I had originally planned to have Burlington's camera actually do the scanning for me, since they have received the appropriate curves and presets needed for their lab scanner from Harman Technologies themselves. I then changed my mind and decided that, as most people who are viewers of my YouTube channel and reader of my reviews, I decided to do the scanning myself using my Epson V500 using the Silverfast 9 SE scanning software. So the biggest problem I think that people have, especially scanners have, with Phoenix 200 is that gray purple base. I think it throws off the color calibrations that are needed when most color negative films have that orange base. But you know what? I'm actually really glad that I decided to do the scanning on my own, because I ended up really liking the results, and it was a lot easier than I expected, with both my V700 and Silverfast handling the scans just fine, and the results were pretty much exactly what I was expecting. So first off, it would be unfair to compare Phoenix to modern color negative stocks from people like Fuji and Kodak, who have been in this game for a very long time. So let's just get the bad stuff out of the way first. The one thing I noticed right away is the lack of dynamic range. In normal terms, you're going to lose either your shadow or your highlight details if there is a wide difference between the two in terms of exposure. You're also going to see a much heavier grain presence than films of a similar speed from, say, Kodak or Fuji. But The result is you still end up getting a really sharp image. So there's a decent amount of edge sharpness in here. The colors were a lot more nicely rendered than I expected. Now, the color bias does tend to lean more towards the warmer tones, so you're going to get a lot more saturation in your reds, your yellows, and your oranges, so you can really lean into that. I can see this being a really good film to shoot in fall colors if we get a really nice fall like we did a couple of years back. The cooler tones are going to seem a little more muted than other ones, but again, that could simply be the fact that shooting under more dull light conditions or shadow conditions. One of the best things you can do to get the best results out of this film is to shoot it in bright, even light. You want to make sure that your subject matters are evenly lit on all sides to sort of mitigate that lack of dynamic range. And I think it would do really well in a studio setting under more of a hot light setup where you can better control how the lighting is done, especially if you are shooting it inside. But the one nice thing is that you can be really creative with this film. I honestly am much happier with these results than what I first saw online, but I'm also glad that I waited until I had better outdoor lighting conditions. And honestly, I found no real difference between shooting it at 200 and 160, except I got a little bit better shadow detail opening up because of that slight overexposure. So it really all depends. I think if you're shooting under a more high contrast lighting condition, you'll want to do that, shoot it at ASA 160. I would not underexpose this film beyond its top box speed of 160, and I would probably not overexpose it by a stop either. You really need to treat Phoenix 200 as a slide film with more of a limited latitude, but a third of a stop to maybe even a 2/3 of the stop over, I think you'll be fine. I'm not going to mince words. Phoenix 200 is a major step forward. It shows that a company that once said that color film was out of their reach proved that they can. And if Harman is smart, which I know they are, they will continue to put this money they've earned into improving Phoenix. Will I use Phoenix again? Well, as I mentioned, I think this would be a great film for fall colors, so maybe I might buy another roll when we start to get into peak color season here in Southern Ontario. But beyond that, I don't see myself using it anymore. It's not because it's a bad film, it's actually a much better film than I initially thought. But as primarily a black and white shooter, new color films aren't really my cup of tea. But new films are very exciting and very important for people in the film photography community to support, especially from a company like Harman, who are film people. They are film people first, more so than say Fuji or even Eastman Kodak, for an example. And they support our community big time. So it's only fair that we turn around and do the same for them. Because in the end, they are just people like us. They are passionate about photography. They just have the means to put media into our hands. So that wraps it up for this review. Have you shot Harman Phoenix 200? What are your thoughts on the film? And are you looking forward to seeing what Harman releases next? If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, hitting that bell notification icon. If you like what you see, give me a thumbs up. And as always, get out there, shoot what you love, with what you love, on what you love. Don't give in to the hype.